Hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name's John Farrell, and this is my response to the brief that was set, which was the word space. So we each had to come up with a project that addressed that. This project's called Traces and Edges, and it's a sort of continuation of a project that I've been working on off and on for the last couple of years. And the New Photographers Guild was a great kind of boot up the backside to really get it into some kind of shape and get some work on the wall. So the pictures are made in and around the site of Ravenscraig Steelworks out in Motherwell. I'm guessing a lot of people know about Ravenscraig Steelworks, but if you don't, it was the largest hot strip mill in Europe until its closure in 1992. When the works were demolished, there was a plan to build a new town. And for various reasons, kind of political and economical, that plan has never came to fruition. So for the last kind of 25 years, much of this site has lain untreated. They demolished the majority of the buildings and the gas towers, and so this landscape has kind of went back to nature. The thing that interested me about this place, it was sort of weird actually. I grew up in Bellsill, which is a nearby town, and I'd always heard about Ravenscraig my whole life, but never knew what it was. And on one of the areas that has been redeveloped, there's a big sports centre, and I used to play five-a-side football there. And when I was waiting on someone to pick me up, I was standing on the edge of the sports centre, and there was this huge kind of black gap, and then Motherwell. And I'm pretty nosy, and I was like, oh, what's this? And my dad said, oh, that's where the steelworks were. And a couple of days later, I got my camera and put my wellies on and kind of went exploring. And I've been doing that off and on for the last couple of years. The site is now one of Europe's largest brownfield land sites. There's over 1.2 million cubic metres of waste buried in the ground. And that was kind of my interest in this place. What does contaminated land look like? What does history look like? It's still quite an emotive subject for a lot of the people who lived and worked there, and the fact that nothing's happened with it is stuck in a lot of people's throats. So I was kind of that was my interest. What does this place look like now? So the project's called Traces and Edges, and this set of 3 pictures is kind of one collective work that comes under the name Unofficial Countryside, Wildflowers and Birdsong. So huge areas of Ravenscraig is now kind of turned to marsh and grassland. There's ponds and kind of streams forming that have no fish, are kind of beautiful but then totally unnatural, and I was really interested in that sort of contradiction. So a lot of the pictures that I've made, they don't really show anything, there's no sort of half demolished buildings or anything that would maybe immediately give away where it was. I kind of wanted to keep it anonymous in a lot of ways. One of my points of reference for making these pictures is the painter George Shaw, he was nominated for the Turner Prize a few years ago, and he made paintings in and around where he grew up in the woods and the sort of non-spaces. And I was always really interested in that, and interested in photographers like Robert Adams and that kind of new topographic. So trying to find some middle ground. And one of the nice things about the New Photographers Guild is that you have to make an exhibition, and it kind of gave me the impetus to get back into the darkroom. So these are all hand printed in street level, and that's been a really nice experience as well, kind of working with the material and just spending, when you're in art school, you don't necessarily have the time to spend with projects, but the New Photographers Guild kind of allowed me a little bit more time and a little bit of breathing space to kind of make this work, and also helped that it was kind of on the back burner anyway. The second part of the work is this set of pictures here, which is called British Steel Blues. The images on here are taken from the John R. Hume archive, which is held by Canmore. John Hume was kind of commissioned to photograph Ravenscraig in 1978 while it was kind of at the peak of its powers. And at that point, Ravenscraig employed over 13,000 people directly in the works, and then around 10,000 people kind of in the local community as a direct result. So you can imagine when the works closed down, the sort of secondary impact that had. The title for this work is British Steel Blues, and that comes from my kind of interest in the water towers that were there, these kind of iconic towers in that kind of classic blue shade. And the only thing that's really left of that now is in the perimeter of part of the site at Craigneuk. There's still the fence at the main gates. It has this kind of blue colour that's rusted away. And I was sort of prompted to work with that and maybe do something that kind of had something more directly related to the works than just the pictures that I've been making. And this is going to be an ongoing project. I'm making an exhibition at Summerlee Museum in Coatbridge next year with my good friend Frank. And that's going to be called, the working title for that's Coal, Steel and Earth. And it's going to be a kind of two projects looking at the industrial heritage and history of Lanarkshire. And I'm really excited to kind of continue on with the project, and I'm planning on going out this week, getting my wellies on and getting dirty. And it's really nice. I mean, it's a really peaceful place in the middle, like in the centre of Lanarkshire. The first place I've ever seen a wild deer and, you know, frogs and there's like beautiful wildflowers, and it's been designated as a sort of nature reserve because there is so much sort of rare bird life and plant life that they can't build on a lot of this now. And I find that really interesting. This land is totally toxic. So even if they could build houses, I don't know, I'd want to live there anyway, but there's something really beautiful about it, and it's sort of not supposed to be there. So yeah, that's a little bit of information on the project. If anyone's got any questions, let me know. Thanks.
Okay, I'd like to start echoing, I know it's been said lots of times, but it's really important to say it. I want to say thank you to Claire, Elaine and James, and also to Malcolm, because it really does, when you're going to leave art school, when you're going to, there's this huge open space that's really, I mean, art school's intimidating, but the open space is even more intimidating, and it's been really, really helpful for me, particularly in being kind of encouraged, inverted commas, to articulate what it was I was working on, and that was really helpful. And from James to not to be afraid to visit the dark side. So thank you for that. Thank you. I guess in trying to relate to my work, I have to tell you a little bit about myself, because that's very, very important in terms of understanding the work. The work is not biographical, but it's personal. I'm from Glasgow. I grew up in a housing scheme in the edge of the city, and that's something that really, of course, wherever you grow up, it shapes you. Growing up in a housing scheme in the area that I did, at the time I did, Glasgow as a city was the bright lights. It was something magical. It was a source of wonder and desire and anticipation. And going to the city as opposed to the housing scheme where there was almost next to nothing available, going into the city was such a special experience. And that's partly it. So that this work, and we were asked to explore the idea of space, I decided that I would explore the idea of the city space and what it meant to me and what it came to mean and and how that's still evolving. So the work was made in 3 cities that I kind of know reasonably well: Glasgow, Munich and Paris, which I kind of usually spend some time in at least once a year. Because I lived in Munich and now I have a very good friend that lives there, so I go there quite regularly. So those were the ones I chose in terms of making the images. How I, in a sense, got to the idea of photography, because I guess when you look at me, I'm not the kind of typical, although there are other mature students at art school, I suppose there was more behind how I arrived here and the idea of trying to explore the kind of the visual side of that. It was interesting for me that I actually never imagined that I would never ever imagined that it was the person that put the idea into my head was Claire. I went to one of Claire's night classes, and I think after a while, when we'd been talking over quite a period of time, Claire started encouraging me to think about it, and I never kind of thought I would end up here. So thank you for that, Claire. So in terms of the work. The work, as I said, is about my relationship with the city, growing up with the bright city lights. But it was also about the idea of territory. So growing up in any city or any space, one of the things that you become, and I'm very conscious of, is the idea of space and how the demarcation works in space. So if you're living in a housing scheme, you're very aware that that's a go area and that's a no-go area. You learn where the territories are. Sometimes those territories are bounded by physical things like rivers or roads or whatever it is, and other times you just eventually learn that that's a boundary. So partly I'm trying to explore that in this work. The other aspect of it is that how the space and how the boundaries change after dark. So all of these photographs were taken when the lights go on. So I had to wait sometimes until that was my kind of idea that I would go, was when the lights came on. And how that shifts the way that you perceive and how I perceive the city and how I relate to it. So in this sense, the work is about the kind of yin of the city. It's about the dark side. It's about the kind of what's sometimes concealed in the city. And we project this image of Glasgow in a certain way, but there's another side to that image. That's the shadow side, the dark side, the concealed side. So the photographs were made in a particular way, and that was something that came out of the mentoring. They were all kind of so they're after dark, but they were made on walks, and the walks were done in a particular way. They were kind of not quite random, but very, in a sense, responding to it. So I found myself, I would decide on a starting place, and then thereafter I just went wherever I thought I wanted to go. So if I saw an alleyway and I wanted to go down it, I just went down it, and I went left or right. So a kind of idea of a kind of unstructured walk. And in terms of taking photographs, I really just responded to what I saw. My only preparation was to think a little bit about what the project was. That I was trying to express this sense of the way that I saw the space and felt about the space in terms of nighttime and that mixture of kind of almost desire and danger at the same time. So that was the way I took the photographs, and just that preparation of thinking about it and then just responding, taking photographs. And then of course with the process of, you tend to shoot a lot that way. It's not often the way I tend to take it. It's very structured, very controlled. This was not like that. So therefore the selection process became really important, and that was really just done on trying to find what fitted together, what I was attracted to, but also what fitted together formally and what fitted together in the sense thematically, and maybe in a sense I hoped it would convey something about the way I felt about the city at night time. Taking the photograph, mostly it was everything was really underexposed, because at night time there's so many lights everywhere, almost it's very hard to find a place. Well, you wouldn't be able to take any photographs as well. So, and then the idea of the toning is really to communicate the idea that it's a psychological landscape. It's not a physical landscape. Unless you know the cities well, hopefully it's harder to tell which city is which, and that is intentional, because that's the way I feel inside. Inside, to me, it's not three separate cities, one over here, one. They're almost like a continuous landscape, and the toning was a way of, because all cities have different colours lights, and even within the cities have different colour lights, and that could become a demarcation of some. And I didn't want that to happen. I really wanted the colour to create a single space. Although, I mean, obviously if you know it, you can tell from the architectural detail, they're different cities. So, that's basically it. Okay, thank you. Oh yeah, and the book obviously contains a much bigger version of it, and probably more of the kind of chosen selection of the images.
Thank you, James, Claire, where is Claire there, and Elaine, yeah, for giving us this opportunity. Like Robert said, I think it was a really valuable thing to do at that moment in time when I had applied, because yeah, I've been always trying to figure out where I'm going with work, and I think I have much more clarity about what I'm doing and where the work is going, I think. And something that's been so obvious before, for example, I like to work in series, like I repeat something, and that's a recurring theme. And I think having made that realization and maybe sticking, like really wanting to stick to that as well, is quite an important realization for me to make. But also, like Robert said, I really value discussions about work and coming in on a regular basis and looking at other people's work, because I think there's nothing better to learn than to see other people's work and reflect on what's being shown, support what they are doing as much as getting support as well. And yeah, I really value that. And I think for someone working in the arts, that's important, because you need to, it's about staying open, I guess, as well. What was great in the very beginning when we applied was the theme of space that I didn't quite consciously, never really thought about unless I was coming from a design kind of perspective, like the design aesthetics idea elements sort of split in like 7 different concepts. Like they look at line, dots, shape, form, color, hue, and space. And that's always something that I've been quite fascinated with, also coming from a point of view of crafts and making, which is something that I sort of do in my spare time as well. And then consciously dealing with a subject that I wasn't thinking about. So sitting down, not coming in with a preconceived idea, but just sort of thinking, well, what is it that I would like to do with it? And particularly working through a presentation in which I try to look at everything that I was thinking about with space. So that was really valuable for me. And from a design aesthetic or from a design point of view, thinking about shape and form, or shape and turning into space, this came out quite early on in the beginning. And I was like, yeah, because James is like, yeah, that's great, let's go do that. And I was like, no, that's not enough. Like, I need to continue working, and I need to continue producing something more. Like, this can't be it, this can't be enough. And then realizing throughout the program as well that maybe it is enough. Maybe it is enough to, in the beginning, to come up with something that you're thinking about, that you want to share and show, and letting yourself go on this process of your own discovery and finding out, okay, what's actually in there. And what I really like to do is having conversations with people. So I talk, particularly when I come to a point of confusion, which happens on a regular basis in this creative process. I have conversations with people, and and talk, like, just generally talk about what my thinking about it is, what other people think. I end up sitting down and consciously start to really think about what it is that I actually want to achieve from this. So anyway, backtracking to the beginning. So where I, like I said, I have interests in various aspects and of design and design language, and as well as series and repetition. And I like using actions in one way or another. Like here, using paper and using the act of folding and unfolding to create this. I also really like. I have a tendency to start very logical. Very, very logical, and I repeat, like I go even like with sometimes I like the work that was here before. I would revisit the same place or rephotograph the same picture countless of times because something didn't quite match. So that's how I start. Then in concept with space, like I said, I try to investigate notions of shape, form, and space. And I noticed a lot, like with the work that I start to do, is that I like to point out something. I want to point towards something. I want to something that I feel sometimes might be overlooked. A simple thing, a simple action. And for me, what I quite originally just wanted to point out is that, yeah, there is this sheet of two-dimensional piece of paper, and this particular paper with this weight, you can only fold 7 times, and that's it. And just pointing out, like, the fact that something that was quite flat and quite large can become quite small, like a dot in a bigger picture. And that the paper, obviously, once you unfold it, completely takes on it becomes a different thing. And from the two-dimensional flatness, obviously, going out, it becomes quite clear that it occupies space quite differently. It raises, like obviously, it rises out, so obviously through the shadow. Anyway, so I've done that, and then I sit down and don't quite know what to do with it. And for me, that's then when my process sort of starts in a way. And I start to think about, okay, what is this? And I begin making lists. I make lists about bigger things that I want to research that comes out of it. My feelings about the action of folding and unfolding, the meaning of the words folding, unfolding, the meanings of the colors that I started to choose, the thing, the similarities, the difference, the chaos, the order. Like obviously the piece of paper is not clean, it's not flat, it's not clear anymore, so it becomes seemingly chaotic. I'm interested in mark making, so all these little tiny marks, but also rectangles and squares, and so I look up everything, even numbers, all the numbers that are hidden in this picture. I end up looking up and find things or that speak to me or that create a certain truth that is my truth, and that doesn't have to be anybody else's truth. But in my world, I was able to figure out my bigger picture, and my bigger picture was that for me there is a universal, there's something universal in here that I felt would speak to all of us. And now you don't have to agree with this, and I'm not asking you to agree with this, but that's what I love to do. So I found something magical in this process, and for me it was this idea of that my friend, a text came out of a conversation, ended up pointing out that this idea of everything in our life is about learning and about improving ourselves in one way or another. But in order to learn and become better or at what we do or improve, we need to befold ourselves in, as hard as that sometimes can be. And I'm sure we've all been down that path. But unless we accept that and we start to deal with it and start to unfold it and maybe talk about it or whatever, the real hidden thing or that is us or is me maybe in that case, doesn't reveal itself until we are coming back into ourselves or becoming in tune with ourselves and just accept that, you know, it's part of us. It's part of the process of learning, of experience, and yeah. So in that sense, for me, nothing happens by chance or by accident. It's all about an unfolding of a story, and that unfolds in front of a structure, like the structure that is always remains, is always there, it doesn't change. Like the universe, it's the same. It's only the way we perceive ourselves that we put value on it, or we make a decision of saying this is something has done this and this and this to us, or this person has done that. But actually, It's only about ourselves, how we perceive it and stuff. So I was going to give you all a piece of paper to fold it in and unfold it, so everybody has their own piece of paper to take away. And because I thought, I think this makes it quite clear what I was trying to do, and that's why it's in that size. Is there's even in that paper there is an underlying structure. And for me, you know, like I said, everybody interprets it in their own way, but there's an underlying structure. May it be age, like we turn old, may turn 10 and 20 and 30 and whatever. But when you unfold it again, every little crease, obviously every paper is different. There won't be the same crease on a piece of paper. So, yeah. So it's story and our own story, and that's sort of what I try to convey. Anyway, yeah.